What's going on, guys? It's Josh from ACI again. We checked the timing on this, and the timing deviation was at like 6.25, which is not good. Plus or minus 5 degrees is what you want. So today we're going to put chains in it. We're going to go ahead and put chains in 90% of most Volkswagen 2 liters. This covers a huge broad spectrum. Now this one's going to be a slight variation from Mark 5, Mark 6 that had the CCTA, CBFA, and the Mark 7s that have a different one as well. But within respect, they're pretty much all the same. We'll go over the slight variations of what's what, how to time out balance shafts, main chains, the guides, the tensioners, the tools that are needed, how I do them, and the best ways to go about doing these jobs. First things first, if you're doing an Audi, you have to pull the front clip off. You can do it without pulling the front clip, but it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. My recommendation is pull the front clip. That means you got to pull the air conditioner out of it and evac the refrigerant. If you don't have an AC machine, do not attempt this on your own. The EPA is not a big fan of us just dropping Freon into the air. It is a deadly gas and it can kill you. So if you don't have an AC machine to evacuate it with, please do not try this at home. If it's a Volkswagen, they're turned the opposite direction, not a big deal. You have to pull the air conditioner out for those, just the engine mount. We will do a separate video on Volkswagen timing chains and how they're different compared to the Audis, just to give a little variation on how I do them. Again, like I said, we're going to start pulling the front clip off of it, get the antifreeze drained. We've already evacuated the AC. We're going to start tearing it down and go through the steps in the process of doing this whole job. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some content. About to pull the front clip off. We've had a little bit of an issue with the AC condenser. So we've got the T30s up here undone to the bat wings. We got the intercooler piping off here. On the other side, the transmission coil lines are undone. Radiator's unhooked. It's ready to come out. The hood cable's unhooked and unplugged. Make sure you plug this back up when you get done. Otherwise, you ain't getting the hood back open for a while. You have to go through the inner fender liner, and it's a big ordeal. So there's 3 16s on this that hold this front clip and everything, and this whole bat wing assembly together. We're going to take them out. Like I said, this car has been in a front end collision, so some of this stuff may not line up correctly 100%. We'll get as best we can. Normally I'll leave this front impact bar in, but because the condenser gave us some issues, I pulled it off, tried to get the condenser out. That did not work. That was an epic fail. So we'll just, fix it when it comes back for that, because we can't get parts today for it. The customer needs his car back tonight. So unfortunately, he won't have air conditioning, but he'll have chains and the motor won't blow up. So that's a plus. So we got the 16s out, all 3 of them. And then you can kind of give a little tug. She comes right off. Take your T30 out on both sides. I always leave these T30s in to hold it up in there so it doesn't fall out on you. Once you get the 16s out, kind of hold it up and then just slowly and gently slide it back. There was some T30s on the bottom. Oh, forgot the fan wiring. I know I forgot something. There are some T30s here and here you need to take out. You take them out, you're good to go. Get this fan wiring out of the way. This has got a big red lock down here. You pull the lock out, push, pull, unplug, and your front clip's off and you're exposed. Alright, we got the front clip off, ready to start pulling the timing chains and time everything up, pulling the covers off. This is the tool you'll need to do the timing chains with for the lower crank pulley. This tool is needed to set this in place. The other tools you'll need to do the timing chains with are spool valve tools and chain holder tools. You'll need both of these for to lock the cams in place. And you'll need one of these here spool valve tools. This is actually a Toyota timing belt tool that I kept for doing the oil pump chain. And I'll show you how that works. You can use this. You can use a small pin, a drill bit, anything to get that back. This is the special socket for the balance shafts, 27 millimeter. Oil filter socket, works perfect, works amazing. I keep all the pins to all the grenades I pulled, so once you pull the pin on the grenade, keep the pin. Like I said, all these different spool valve tools, each one's different, each one's unique, so you don't know which one you need till you get in there. This is for the Gen 3 engines to turn the cams with. A 19 should do it to turn the cams back and forth. So we'll put these down here, and we'll start tearing the front end apart, starting with the belt and tensioner. I'll pull the serpentine belt off, pull the tensioner out because it blocks access to the front cover. You don't need to pull this coolant hose off, but I'm going to pull it off just show you, just so you can see ease of access to get everything. You can leave this in, it won't interfere with anything, you're fine to do that. That's just how I do it. Just help show y'all a better picture of everything. I wouldn't pull it off if I was doing it and we weren't videoing it. I would just leave it like it is. But you can just pull it up, pick it up, get to the bolts. Now, keep in mind, this timing cover is missing timing bolts, or timing cover bolts, because this timing cover is the old style, doesn't have all the bolts. So we do have the extra bolts. We'll be putting new ones in there. He'll have all the proper bolts. This is the dipstick tube that doesn't have a dipstick in it. It's there for looks. You can put a dipstick if you want to. Audi uses the MMI to pick up the oil level. So we're going to start tearing this front end apart, get everything tore apart up here. You can see it's a lot of oil leaks up here. It's really nasty. We'll get a new lower timing cover with a crank seal. We're going to replace the seals and gaskets in this, clean all this off so you can see everything again, and make it not leak oil. So like I said, we'll start with pulling this hose off first, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we're going to start with taking off the serpentine belt, which is right here. I can't find my tool to really do it with, but you can get a 4mm Allen socket, or Allen wrench, or something like that, or an 1/8 inch drill bit, I do believe it is. And you just pull the tensioner up, pin it. That holds your belt tensioner in place. You pull the belt off, and we put it in file 13. We're not reusing that belt. That belt is now trash. We're going to replace that belt. Every chain job gets a new belt. Then you're going to take these bolts out. These are one-time use bolts. I forgot to get those bolts, unfortunately, so we'll be reusing them. They're aluminum. Be very careful putting them back in. They will snap, they will break, and they are not fun. Then we'll start pulling off all of the upper stuff up here. Start with the dipstick, the T30 for all this. Depending on the generation, these T30s for this may be one-time use. These are not, these are steel, so we're okay there. If they were the aluminum ones, they are one-time use. You cannot reuse them because they will snap. A 10 mil also fits this. You don't have to use a T30. You can use a 10 mil. So all that's loose and out. And just take a little pocket screwdriver or something and ease up on the spool valve, cam magnet here. It's going to come out with oil on it and everything. Take your rag, wipe it off. Do not put this in oil or in a magnet tray. It can mess it up. Be very careful. Also notice you may have a metal one. This one is plastic. This is the updated version, updated part number. So therefore it's the newer style. So to set that over out of the way, so now your front cover's loose, you just simply pull the front cover off, and it has been leaking a lot. I mean, this gasket is kind of malleable. That's pretty hard. That's hard. So you can kind of see how difficult it is to pick it up out of the hole. It's very, very brittle. So that gets replaced. So this gasket, this O-ring will get replaced. Here's the spool valve I was talking about. See how the pins are offset? They're not center, they're offset high. So we'll be getting the tool to get that here in a second. Make sure this moves back and forth. This particular engine does not have timing marks on the upper cover here. What you're looking for is this piece here. Pull light to it right quick. This piece here and this piece here behind the cam bracket. Those are your timing marks. Now we're actually not far off being in time, so it's really hard to see, but I will try to wipe it off down here as best I can to give you an idea of where your timing marks are. Now keep in mind, a lot of these cases will have 2 timing marks. So you've got one there, that little triangle there, and you'll have another one right here. That's your other mark right there. So you got your triangle mark right here. So it's very hard to see, but that's your triangle mark there, and you have that mark there. Go ahead and just pull the dipstick tube out because it's in the way. Always spin clockwise. Never go counterclockwise. So that right there is on the notch, but we're not in time. That right there and that right there, not anywhere close to where we're supposed to be at. Alright, so we got dial calipers. I use digital just because it's easier. So you're going to measure your split from here to your timing line mark, which is about right here. And we're at 58. And you use measure your split between this mark and this mark. We're at 127. So by the book, this car is out of time. Let's make sure that's right. Well, actually 125. So the split is okay. Always make sure it's zeroed. But your measurement here is 61 to 64 millimeters, or at 59. But your split is supposed to be 161 to 124 to 126, or 126. So that's one way to know if you're out of time or not. The other way is when we pull the plug, we'll count the rings. X number of rings, she's out of time. First thing, we're going to go ahead and pull the crank balancer, and we're going to try to use the tool that takes the crank balancer off. So we're going to take out the 2 bolts in the timing cover. One down here and one up here. Because this tool right here has a little arrow that points up, and you put the tool in like so, and this holds the crank balancer on and in place. So while you're taking off the crank bolt, it doesn't move. There is a special tool to hold it with. Typically, you don't have to worry about using the tool as long as it's not super tight. Torquing it down, you want to use the tool to get it right and get it tight. And then just take the bolt out. Now, if you don't have this tool, you can use your hand. There's an O-ring in there as well. Make sure that comes out. Put the O-ring back on the bolt. The new bolt will come with an O-ring. Set that aside. Do not take this off just yet. You're going to take this tool. You're going to thread it in until it stops. Once it stops, you're going to turn the thumb screw in till it stops. Then you can take off this tool and your crank balancer will come off in your hands. This is the proper way to take it out. This is what keeps it lined up. So it keeps it all in happy checks and all that good stuff. You just pull your crank pulley off. Remember, there's a certain dowel that lines up from here to the piece in here. So that's how that works. Now that this is on there, if you want to use this tool to turn it with, you put that in, and you take the thumb screw, and you tighten the thumb screw down on top of this. And that is how you can move this around. Now this is not 100% 12 o'clock for top dead center just yet. It's out of time just a hair, but remember the engine's also tilted sideways at an angle. So that's there. So we'll go ahead and pull the upper cover, the lower cover off. So you just go up top and just pull it off. The dowel pins will hold you up a little bit because they are steel and they can be a bit of a pain. Just pop it off. Like I said, it's going to make a little oil. Alright, now this does have the new style tensioner in it, but if you look at it, we're all the way out. all the rings out. And we'll start by counting them. You're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 or 9 rings. 7 is chains. 7 rings means you need chains. That's the number you're going for there. So, and you can look at the top side. There's little detents in there. This little thing is what holds it from collapsing. But as you can tell, the tensioner is fully expanded. There's nothing more to hold it in place. It's all done. So we'll go ahead and pull off the cam bracket. The spool valve is left-hand threads. Don't forget that. It is not right-hand threads, it's left-hand threads. So lefty tighty, righty loosey. It's opposite. Keep that in mind. That does matter. So take out these T30s and take out this triple square and the spool valve. Cam bracket comes off, and then we'll show how to time it up and have like that. So on the back of these cam brackets, there's a screen here that blows out. And it's pretty common to go bad. If the screen's blowed out, you just take and pop it out and don't reuse it. The new updated versions don't require it no way. They take it out. There's a TSB from Volkswagen to take it out and get rid of it if it's already blowed out. The downside to that is you need to find wherever the rest of that screen went, and right there it is. That is pretty lucky, because normally I don't find them, or they wind up inside the spool valve and that causes the spool valve to fail. What normally happens is, this is your spool valve here. They get caught inside the channels in here and they get pinched and they restrict the oil flow. That's what normally causes that. So that little screen right there can cause the camshaft to fail because the cams are hollow. This can go inside the camshaft, get stuck in the oil passages, stuff like that. So if you do your timing chains and you pull it off and you see that any one of these passages may be blocked or clogged up with a metal screen, get it out. Get out of there quick. Like I said, if the screen's broken already, don't worry about it. Take it out, throw it in the trash, and you don't need it. Just make sure you clean up the cam bracket really good, get all the debris out of it, get all the old oil out of it, make sure there's no trash like that stuck into it, and then this is your cam bracket. So that's there. So now we're going to go through and pin the oil pump, which is what I showed you earlier with this special tool here that I have. You just push it straight back, put the pin in like so, take off your T30. There's your oil pump chain. Your oil pump chain will come off. This one, we may have to take them off as a unit all together, or we may be able to take off this right here and just get them off that way. The chain will move a good bit. It'll come all the way out, and out it comes. This is your oil pump chain. There is no timing to it. You just put it on as it goes and call her done. This, we may have to retime the engine some when we get it all back together. So I'm gonna put this back on for now, just to give us a little way to move it. So the tensioner I'll leave on until I get ready to pull all these other pieces out. They are number 10 triple squares, so just break them loose. Keynote: every one of the non-tensioner guide pin bolts are the exact same. Your only two ones that are different are this tensioner and this tensioner guide pin bolt. Those are the only two that are different. They are bigger to allow the tensioner to walk back and forth. That's it. That's the only reason they're different. So it's timed up. It's where it needs to be at. We're going to grab our cam timing tools here. We're going to screw them into the little places inside the block here. And we'll grab a 19 wrench here in a second. And we'll pin these over where they need to be at. Like I said, this is not actually in time just yet. It's a little bit out. Not a big deal. You will notice though that you cannot slide this into the exhaust side cam with the exhaust side guide in place. It will not fit. The chain will interfere. It just doesn't quite go. Actually, yeah, the chain on the bottom side interferes and won't just quite go. Just kind of hits a little bit. So we'll grab a 19. And we will, well, that jumped. That's how bad the chain is. It jumped that quick. So it's not a big deal that it jumped. I prefer it didn't. But that cam's now locked. And this cam, oh, that's right, this has the new style cam, so you can't do that with those. So this has the cam actuation valves on the side. You can't really use a 19 for that. You can use it on the intake side. It does just fine. For this one, we'll put the number 10 triple square back in it and tighten it down to move the cam back and forth as need be. Just enough to get it snug so we can move it. And then we can walk the cam back and forth. You can also use a spanner wrench, like a pin wrench in here to move it with. That works. Do not use anything on the snout of the cam. It will cause damage. So it's almost in, but obviously, like I said, it won't go in because of the guides. So we'll go ahead, pull these pins all the way out. Pull this one out. It's going to drop down, and that will that goes right in. So this guide can go ahead and slide out. Yes, the tensioner is still installed. It's not going to matter because obviously it's all the way out. This guide is trash. File 13. We'll go ahead and pull the tensioner out. Our cams are locked. They ain't going nowhere. But you notice this didn't move when I pulled it out. She's all the way out. That's all it took to get it out. That's how failed it was. Like I said, this has the new style tensioner in it, but improper oil changes and other factors play a role in why it failed. These are oil fed. They have oil pressure in them. There's some plungers and stuff in there that actuate back and forth. So I mean, this is the new style. Doesn't fail as often as the old style does, but it does still fail. So there's that. I will be putting the tensioners in oil here shortly to let them pre-soak while I clean this up and get all the RTV off of this. All right, so the chain's out. Like I said, put these tensioners in oil before you go back together with them so they get a little oil into them. This is the old chain. If you notice, there are marks on this chain. You can kind of tell how slack chains are by how much slack they have by holding them at a stiff angle and making them move up and down. And this is, you know, if you want to make a necklace, go right ahead, knock yourself out. I could care less. You do what you want to with that thing. It's trash at this point. We'll go ahead and take the balance shaft tensioner out, and my lights are dying. It's kind of tight, but not super tight. You don't have to overload it and torque it all to pieces. It's not that big a deal. The balance shaft chains are a little difficult to tie up sometimes. They can be very finicky. This is your tensioner for the balance shaft. Some of you VR guys may recognize this tensioner. This is actually the same style tensioner the VR6s use. It's got a little peephole here for the oil. Oil's fed through the block, goes into here. As the oil pressure hits, it holds it from falling back and keeps the tensioner tight on the balance shafts. So we'll go ahead and pop these out, get them off. Also, keep in mind of one very small little feature. This goes on a certain way. Remember how it came off. You always want to put the chamfer in the back, or the piece in here to the back. We'll change that back here in a second because it's aggravating me too. These guides are all trash. Those go there. That's file 13. Got the balance shaft chain off. It's got marks in it as well. It's got highlighted markers on it, stuff like that. The balance shafts have to tie up a certain way, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. The exhaust side balance shaft can only go on one direction. It only has one way to spin, only has one way to line up. However, the intake side balance shaft, that is a different story. That can time up 7 different ways, and only one way is correct. Roughly every 7 revolutions, the lines on this spur gear line up with the dots on this helical cut gear for the chain sprocket. So this is your balance shaft here. This is your guide or your idle sprocket for the balance shafts. This is your other balance shaft on here for the exhaust side. You can kind of see here That's what it's for. So, and this is your cam, your crank gear here, with everything lined up. So I'm gonna get my hands cleaned up right quick. We'll get all the parts. We'll get these timed up. Show you how to time those up, how to put them in, get the tension system oil, and we'll be right back. All right, so we're gonna do the balance shafts right quick. We cleaned up the block surface here. Got some oil drippage. You ain't gonna worry about that. Got the block cleaned up. The upper oil pan is cleaned up. The oil pan or the oil pump chain is just kind of hanging down here. You make sure you clean all this stuff off the timing gears and all that good stuff. Get it all nice and shiny. We've got the tensioners up there soaking some oil. We'll be putting some liquid moly LM48 insulation paste on the timing chain components. This is some really good stuff. It's got MOS2 already built into it. So if you don't run MOS2 and you do your oil change with this stuff for the chain and stuff, you will have MOS2 in the engine, which is fine. It's good for it. Every change job we do gets MOS2 and an oil change, and I use this for the spool valve and the chains and the guides, so they're pre-lubed during installation. So we're gonna put that on there when we get done. So if you look in here, you've got dots to line up. And it's kind of hard to tell, it's kind of hard to see, but the dot on the exhaust side is right here. And that lines up to there. And then the other one will have two dots, and they're really difficult to see, but if you see the screwdriver, there's a dot here and a dot here. There's two dots there. Those two dots need to line up to this one dot here. That yellow marker has to line up there. So that's one revolution. They're about 180 out right now. 2 revolutions. 3 revolutions. On the 4th one, she should line up. And right there, we're lined up. That's where that should face. Your dots should face the bolt heads on the balance shafts. That's how you know you're in. So we'll go ahead and hang the chain. Now you also can look at your marks on the crank here, which this is for the balance shaft chain, cam chain, oil pump chain. You've got a mark here for the top for the chain. The shafts are timed up, so all you got to do is come in here, lay your chain in on your marks in the center, put it on there, and you are good to go. Now we'll put our guides in, starting with the upper guide that I made mention of prior, that you want to make sure that this guide is turned the right direction. I always put it in first just because it's the more difficult guide to get in sometimes. It can play with you a little bit. It's not always the fun guide. This one does have eccentrics cut into it to allow it to move back and forth a little bit. Then we'll go down here and put the lower guide in. It kind of wraps around everything. Get all the bolts put in the right area. Leave them snug or leave them loose. Don't tighten them up just yet. Then we'll put our tensioner guide in, which goes in like so. Your marks are lined up. You're all good there. You're all timed up. Now we'll go ahead and tighten down. Not too tight, they will bust. They don't torque to a whole lot, so don't really worry about it. But now the tensioner can go in next. Before we put the tensioner in, we're going to take some of this LM48 installation paste, and we're going to squeeze some of it on the chain in a couple spots to help pre-lube it. And on the guide, same thing down here. Shoot some into the guide on top of the chain. And I'll put some on the tensioner side as well. So this way, when she starts up the first time, she don't start up dry and rattle and make a bunch of noise. So we'll grab our Gatorade bucket of oil here. Get out our balance shaft tensioner, which is soaked in oil. We've been soaking it. We'll go ahead and put it in. Like I said, there is no specific way you have to do this. The newer engines, you have to take all this apart as an assembly, put it all back into the assembly, and tension it all at the same time. You cannot tension one before the other. This one you can do this way only because it's independent of each other. So once this is in, we'll tighten it down. It doesn't have to be stupid tight, just hand tight, that's about it. A little bit more. Too tight, you'll crack the block. So we got everything for the balance shafts installed. I went ahead and preset the cam timing to a roundabout base. If you remember, the intake side did jump when we took it apart, so I pushed it back into where it needs to be, measured the somewhat split between here. It's at 63. It needs to be a little more, but I'll take it where it's at, and I'll push this back. These are at 127. Once the chains are in, it's properly timed up, this will come back to inspect. So we'll go ahead and throw the chain on now. Like I said, this is our cam chain. It's got the splits here. Just go ahead and throw it in, shove it down through the front cover, lay the marks where they need to go. Like I said, you got your timing marks there, and you've got your colored links. Then down here, we need to roll the chain around to get it onto the right link, because it's out of where I need to be at right now. So we're going to pull it off the intake cam, and we're going to just put this on the proper spot down here. So we're in there. We'll leave it locked on down there. So I need to pull the intake side cam back a tooth because we're out a full tooth. So we'll hold this where it needs to be at, and then we'll roll the intake cam back just a hair. And then we'll lock it in right there. There's a lot of slack in that. That'll be taken up here shortly. We're still in down there. So that being said, now that I'm blind, we can go ahead and move the exhaust side over a hair, because it is still out. Alright, so we got everything set up here. We pulled the lock out. We're going to roll the intake, the exhaust cam over. We're going to go and we're going to pin it. So now we can get our guides in, and then we can get our slack out. Don't be alarmed, there's a bunch of slack in there. As long as you stay lined up on your marks, you're good. We'll go ahead and we'll throw this guide in first. It just goes up and around. This guide is a little more difficult to get in sometimes. If you find yourself struggling with it, just kind of roll it around, it'll fall in. Let it set there, then grab your two of your pin bolts that are left. You only got 3 of these left, so you're limited on what you can put in here. Like I said, don't tighten them all the way up. Leave them loose so you're in to wiggle. And then we're going to allow this cam to go backwards so we can take the slack out, and we'll let this one roll back over. These are actually out of time right now. Yes, the marks are lined up here, here, and here, but there's too much slack. So they're technically out of time. So we want to make sure we stay in time down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to first pull the intake cam out of time. And then we're going to pull the exhaust cam out of time first, excuse me. And we're going to pull it out, let it rotate this way, holding some slight pressure on it. And then we'll take and slide this back and let this slide, and that jumped. Not what we want to have happen. So we're gonna have to start from scratch all over again. Maybe not so much. Maybe I'll roll the intake back. Let's put that there and see if the crank stayed. Okay, the crankshaft did stay. So I'm just gonna roll the exhaust back over. Pick up the chain, roll it around. So we'll go ahead and just put that there.
Try to get the push through.
Hold it in. Then we'll put the tensioner guide up and through. I'll slide this all the way back so we get all that in there. Still got too much slack on this side though, but we can get this guide pinned back in. Alright, let's leave it loose. Got a little bit of slack here, that's what you want. So then we'll take this. Alright, so we got that there. Now we got to do all this to get slack on the tensioner side to get the tensioner in, so we have room to push it over. So that's all there, all the slack's there. Now our other tensioner is down here. We'll go ahead and slide it in. So you got plenty of room to play with. Not a big deal. We'll go ahead and tighten down the tensioner. Alright. So we got good, everything's good there. We're going to leave that there. Then we're going to take this, I'm going to rotate it. We're going to rotate this one direction to get the guide in the top. So we have to do that right there. This is where an assistant would be handy, but you can do it by yourself. Obviously, because I'm doing it by myself. Even though I have an assistant standing there doing nothing, just staring at me. So now that guide's in, that's why I say do it last. Otherwise, you'll never get it in, because as you can tell, I'm having to hold the chain in tension just to get that guide in. So while I'm sitting here with one arm doing 3 jobs at once, we'll go ahead and shoot some lube up in there. Not anymore. I'm good, Vanover. So that's good there. And then we'll put some on this side. Now we're going to roll all this back to where the slack is on this side. Never pull the tensioner until the slack's on the tension side. Run a little bit there. Pull the pin. Throw the grenade. It's timed up. There's no going back. So now we'll go ahead and we'll set that down there. Like I said, we know we're timed up here, and we know we're timed up down here. So we'll make sure this is tight here, and we'll get something to turn the crank with, and we'll turn it 2 revolutions. After 2 revolutions, we'll recheck our timing and make sure that it's properly timed up. So if you're using the special tool, it's a 32mm socket. You put it on there, and you bar the engine over by hand twice. Notice how the tensioner's moving out? Keep moving that tensioner detent ring back so no more can be done. Alright, that was 1 revolution. Here comes our second one. Now, here's how we know we're on top dead center. This should be at the 12 o'clock position. Okay? That's roughly 12 o'clock position. We'll take our dial caliper, turn them on, unlock them. They're zeroed. We're going to take and put this and this in there. We're at 64 on 125 roughly. 125, 124.96. So what you're looking for is 61 to 64, no, yeah, 61 to 64 on the split here. And we're at 64. Then here is 124 to 126. And we're right at 125, so right in the middle. If you have those two numbers there in that range, you're timed up and spot on. And as you can see, we're only 2 rings out, which is a whole lot better than we were before, which was all the rings out. So that's all done. That's back together. We're gonna put the timing covers back on. We're gonna put everything back together, and then we'll show how to check the timing when it's all said and done to see where it's at after putting chains in it, with a fresh oil change, fresh guides, all that good stuff. So we're gonna button this back up, put all the covers back on it, get it all cleaned up, change the oil, and yeah, we'll be right back shortly. Alright guys, we're back on the A4 doing the timing chains. The other day, had a bit of an issue. I got to a hurry, I messed up, and I left the timing chain guide pin bolts loose, which caused it to jump timing. So, I'm not perfect either. We all make mistakes. It's fixed now. The timing is set. On startup, it actually jumped a tooth. So, therefore the timing was out. I had a P0016. So now, you can see with Viacom, we had a video up about checking timing, and I had the wrong IDE numbers up there and the wrong values showed. So IDE 00182, if you have advanced measure value blocks, that's what you have to go to. If you have regular measure value blocks, it's measure value block 93.1 or 93.2. No, I'm sorry, it's 93.3. That's what it is, 93.3. But you're looking for your camshaft adaptation intake bank 1 phase position, which is what basically where the camshaft's at. So now we're at 0.33 degrees, which is perfect. Like I said, plus or minus 5 degrees is where you want it at. We're within that spec with new chains. So the chains are done. They're all on there. They're all good to go. He should be good to go for another 120, 130,000 miles with no issues, nothing like that. Aside from the issue of me not having the timing right the first time, not a bad job. So if you decide to tackle it yourself, like I said, take your time, go slow, pay attention to stuff, double check your bolts, make sure they're always tight. Obviously, like I said, I made a mistake, didn't do that, so that cost me, but that was on me. We fixed it, it's fine. Anything more than about 2 or 3 teeth, you can bend valves, so be careful with that. If you get 5, 6, 7 teeth out, you're likely to bend valves, so just be aware of that. If you do have to get the timing out, you don't have to set it back, call someone what they're doing, or have it towed to a shop that's what they're doing if you're not in our area. If you are in our area, bring it to us, we'll do the timing before you take care of it. As again, hit the subscribe button, like, follow, share, all that good stuff, and until next time, we'll see you then.